Bloodlust meets greed in the murky depths of the Australian outback. A monstrous predator stalks its prey, and two divers are caught in the deadly crossfire. Will they escape the jaws of terror or become its next victims? The film begins in the 1940s in Australia. Some people are traveling with stolen crates. During the journey, a sudden jolt from the new driver, Sean, causes the rear doors of the vehicle to open, and the crates fall to the ground. Their leader, Dylan, immediately gets out of his car and tells everyone to pick up the crates. We see that gold is spilling out of the crates, meaning these people are stealing gold. Meanwhile, Dylan takes the keys from the rookie driver, saying he won't drive the van anymore, and appoints another man as the driver. After picking up the crates, they continue their journey, but due to lack of attention, their vehicle skids and falls into the river. Forced by circumstances, the henchmen exit through the windows and swim to the shore, where their boss reprimands them. One man tries to reassure him that the crates are safe for now since no one will find them underwater. However, Dylan remains unconvinced and says he will handle this issue himself. Then he gives a signal, and one of his men slits the driver's throat. Sean is terrified upon witnessing this. Dylan kicks his man and throws him into the river as punishment. After administering the punishment, Dylan thinks of a way to retrieve the crates and decides to hire professional divers. The culprits leave without realizing that one of their men has been pulled underwater by something in the river. The next day, in a rural area, Clara helps her partner Jimmy with his diving mission. When she notices Ernie is not in the workshop, she asks where he is. It turns out he's still sleeping off a night of drinking. Clara wakes him up and updates him on the diving tools and equipment report. She's excited about the city bridge project, but Ernie says the contract hasn't been finalized yet. Their company doesn't own a boat, making their services more expensive, and they've had no work recently. Ernie apologizes, saying he can't pay his workers. Clara reassures him they'll get through the tough times. Meanwhile, Dylan approaches Clara, wanting to meet the site owner. Ernie takes him to his office. Dylan discovers Ernie has a military background similar to his own. Dylan gets straight to the point, explaining a friend had an accident near the river and needs help retrieving items from a vehicle. Ernie, desperate to keep his business afloat after losing clients, agrees to the job. Dylan sets one condition. No diver can ask about the contents of the crates. Ernie is suspicious but accepts the deal. After finalizing the deal, the culprits leave. Clara is puzzled why she wasn't informed about what they're retrieving. Ernie explains that he's exhausted from living in debt in this shed and shows her how much they'll be paid for the job. Seeing the large sum, Clara gets excited and says they can now buy a new boat and repair all the damaged equipment. After preparing everything, Ernie and his team head to the river, where they meet Dylan's henchman, Janice. A few minutes later, they meet the rest of the culprits. When Dylan sees that there are only Clara and Jimmy on the diving team, he becomes angry. Ernie explains that these two are the best divers in the area. Jimmy mentions that he spent time in the water since childhood, and Clara developed her skills during Army service. Dylan then gives them permission to proceed with the job. After unloading the equipment, Ernie helps them put on the diving suits. While the professional divers are preparing, Janice asks Dylan if he'll tell them about the contents of the crates. Dylan says it doesn't matter because once the job is done, they'll kill all the divers. After everything is ready, Clara and Jimmy dive into the river's depths and start searching for the vehicle, while Ernie monitors the oxygen cables and safety ropes. Using communication radios, Clara tells her boss that visibility in the water is very low. Ernie advises them to stay close to the riverbed's surface so they don't get lost. Suddenly, Jimmy spots a large shadowy figure swimming and asks Clara if she's seen it too, but Clara hasn't noticed anything. As they move forward, they find the van. Clara assesses the van's position and says they'll need a crane to extract it. However, Dylan insists that they only need the contents from inside the van, so they should open the trunk. Jimmy heads to the driver's door and tries to retrieve the key stuck in the ignition. Clara moves to the window to check the labels on the boxes. Just then, a large fish bumps into her, causing her to fall. Jimmy gets worried and asks what's happening, but before he can react, a shark attacks Clara, trying to bite her head off. The shark's mouth gets stuck in Clara's helmet. During this commotion, Clara's oxygen cables get dislodged, and she loses consciousness due to lack of air. Ernie tries to handle the situation and shouts to Jimmy to hold on to his partner so he can pull them to shore. Sean immediately arrives and helps turn the crank, rescuing Clara, who regains consciousness after a while. Then we see, while examining Clara's suit, Jimmy finds a bull shark tooth and informs Dylan about the predator's presence. Dylan is surprised, as sharks are not typically found in rivers. The divers explain that it might be a bull shark, a species that can swim hundreds of kilometers and enter rivers before returning to the ocean. Hearing this, Dylan becomes angry and asks why the professionals are so scared when they deal with such situations daily. Ernie angrily replies that bull sharks are extremely aggressive and commonly attack divers. Seeing the divers' reaction, Dylan furiously says that the delay's cost will be deducted from their final payment and leaves with his men to search for some machinery. A little later, the culprits return, and Dylan announces that he's found a fisherman who will arrive the next day. In the morning, Bobby, a large fisherman, arrives at the camp to expedite the work. The gang leader tells Bobby that if he catches the shark by noon, he'll get an extra 50 pounds. Without wasting time, Bobby asks to take Jimmy and Sean with him, as he'll need strong men to catch the shark. When they reach the middle of the river, Bobby throws fish pieces around the boat to attract the shark and then casts his fishing line. Now they just have to wait for the predator. Sean stays alert, ready to use Bobby's rifle if needed. Suddenly, Bobby feels a strong tug on the fishing line and shouts for Jimmy to help him hold the rod. However, the line breaks and the shark escapes. Bobby angrily starts fixing the fishing rod. Just then, Sean spots the shark and he gets the order to shoot. When Dylan realizes Sean doesn't know how to handle the rifle, Jimmy takes it and fires at the shark but misses. This enrages the shark even more. The shark attacks the boat, biting at the engine. Jimmy tries to shoot repeatedly, but it doesn't help. Bobby quickly grabs his harpoon and waits for the right moment. However, before he can react, the shark rams the boat from below, causing all three to fall into the water. Panicked, Jimmy and Sean climb back into the boat, but the shark drags Bobby underwater, and this terrifying scene sends Jimmy and Sean into a panic, making them unable to help Bobby. The shark takes Bobby away, making him its prey. To save their lives, Jimmy and Sean return to the shore, where Clara and Ernie check on their well-being. Meanwhile, Dylan mocks Bobby's death, which disgusts Clara. Exhausted, Ernie decides to call the police to report the fisherman's death, but Dylan tries to stop him. Ernie says that his team won't take any more risks and throws their payment on the ground. However, before they can leave, the entire team is surrounded by the culprits, who point guns at them. Dylan pushes Ernie to the ground and reveals that the crates contain stolen gold biscuits. Ernie is shocked and asks what will happen once they retrieve the cargo. Dylan assures him that nothing bad will happen to them. Forced, the team starts working, building a wooden crate while the robbers watch them. During this time, Jimmy tries to communicate with Ernie in his native language, but Janice threatens him, warning that if he speaks anything other than English, he'll be killed. After the crate is ready, the divers gather to lower it into the water. Ernie explains that they'll use the crate to figure out the best route to reach the van. To distract the shark, a rope with bait is deployed. Clara helps Ernie and Jimmy with their wetsuits and tells her boss that she'll dive this time instead. However, Ernie refuses, saying Clara shouldn't risk her life again. Just then, Janice notices that the rope has hooked a shark, and he immediately informs Clara. Clara starts turning the crank to bring Jimmy and Ernie back to the surface, while Dylan manages the safety cables. After a while, Jimmy and Ernie reach the van and start unloading the boxes. Ernie tells Jimmy to turn on his portable light, and they begin to unload the boxes. On the shore, Janice notices that the shark has bitten through the rope and immediately warns Clara. Clara tells her team to bring their divers back up immediately. Ernie hears the warning and tells Jimmy to keep an eye on the shark while he secures the gold boxes to the crate. Then, he tells Clara to try pulling the crate up with the winch, but the rope gets stuck. Ernie removes some weight, allowing Sean to pull the crate a considerable distance. However, the crate gets stuck on a tree underwater. They manage to free the crate, but just then the shark suddenly attacks and bites Ernie's arm. Panicked, Jimmy strikes the shark with his spear and hands Ernie a knife, shouting for Clara to pull him up. However, the shark is too fast and attacks Ernie again, causing more injuries. Jimmy quickly returns to the surface and, with Clara's help, brings Ernie's body back up. As they surface, Dylan stops the winch and is overjoyed to see the crates filled with gold. Clara and Jimmy remove Ernie's suit and check his wounds, but it's too late. Ernie tells them to escape, but Clara refuses. She asks the robbers for help, but no one listens. Ernie looks at his friends one last time and passes away in Clara's arms. Furious at his friend's death, Jimmy grabs a knife and starts attacking the robbers. Dylan challenges him, and Janice pulls out a pocket knife, suggesting a fair fight. Jimmy, in a rage, stabs Janice. Dylan starts beating Jimmy instead of killing him, as Clara threatens that if he kills Jimmy, he won't get the boxes back. The next day, Dylan tells Clara to respect her boss Ernie's memory, and then orders Sean to use Ernie's body as bait for the shark. Hearing this, Jimmy furiously declares that he will take revenge. Forced, Clara dives into the water. As she reaches the van, she starts loading the shipment into the crate. However, the shark spots her and Clara quickly hides in the front seat of the van. There, she finds a revolver. Just as she's observing it, the shark bursts through the window. Clara escapes through the other side and uses a branch to trap the shark inside the van. After escaping, she hides the revolver behind her waist and returns to the shore. Clara hands the revolver to Jimmy. When the thieves are distracted by their gold, Clara removes her costume and hides the weapon again, planning a surprise attack when the time comes. Then, he tells Clara and Jimmy to take Ernie's body to the boat. But before they can, a policeman arrives and orders everyone to drop their weapons. Sean shoots the policeman. Jimmy quickly grabs Janice to prevent from getting a weapon, but Dylan retrieves his weapon and kills the policeman by shooting him repeatedly. Clara shoots Dylan, but he escapes to the car to retrieve more powerful weapons. Meanwhile, Janice attacks Jimmy, but Clara shoots Janice. However, Janice overpowers Jimmy. In a fit of rage, Clara hits Janice on the head with her helmet, and Janice falls unconscious into the water. The shark, now free from the van, swims freely in the river. Clara and Jimmy dive into the river as Dylan spots them and boards the boat. Jimmy swims underwater to avoid him. Clara surprises Dylan and pushes him into the water, but Jimmy gets shot in the leg and struggles to swim to shore. Dylan tries to shoot Jimmy again, but Clara pulls him back into the water. Dylan swims towards the shore to save his life. Quickly, Clara boards the motorboat and reaches the shore before Dylan. Clara picks up the revolver that fell from Sean's body and tries to threaten Dylan. Dylan laughs, saying, "You don't have the guts to kill anyone." But Clara smiles and says, "I don't have to kill." At that moment, the bull shark bursts out of the water and grabs Dylan, dragging him into the river. Now that everything is over, Clara tends to Jimmy's wounds. Both divers look back at the river once again, where they faced death, greed, and a terrifying monster. But ultimately, they survived this never-ending nightmare. 3 weeks later, Clara and Jimmy return to the old shed where they used to work as divers. They're greeted by an officer from the Australian National Bank and Ernie's company lawyer. The lawyer reveals that Ernie had written in his will that his company should now belong to Jimmy. Jimmy becomes the new owner of the company. Then the bank officer steps forward and announces that a £2,500 reward was offered for the recovery of the gold bars, and this check is handed to Clara. Both divers are overjoyed, knowing they can now afford a new boat. Clara looks at Ernie's picture, and the film comes to an end.